Welcome to Raging Moderates. I'm Scott Galloway.
And I'm Jessica Tarlov.
Charlie Kirk's memorial on Sunday looked less like a service and more like a state funeral. His widow, Erika, moved the crowd with an emotional speech. She forgave her husband's accused killer and vowed to carry on his work at Turning Point USA. The scale of the event said it all. Vice President J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, and President Trump, who cast Kirk's death as not just a personal tragedy, but an assault on conservative ideals. Meanwhile, Disney was suddenly at the center of the story. After pulling Jimmy Kimmel off the air for his comments on Kirk, the company faced protests in Burbank, boycott calls from subscribers, and rare criticism from both Republicans and Democrats who say it looks like an attack on free speech. Ted Cruz, Senator Cruz, called it dangerous as hell. Let's start with how Trump put it at Charlie Kirk's memorial on Sunday.
In that private moment on his dying day, we find everything we need to know about who Charlie Kirk truly was. He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose. He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erika. But now Erika can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
You first.
He's always the same, at least. He's consistent, which I guess people appreciate about him, that you always know what you're going to get because it's absolutely the same in how horrific it is every single time. And I thought that they should have 100% closed this event with Erika Kirk, who continues to astound with her strength and her grace under unimaginable circumstances. I don't know if you caught the entirety of her speech or, saw clips of it, but she was remarkable. I couldn't speak to 65,000 people anyway, let alone 11 days after my husband was assassinated in front of a crowd of thousands of students, and it's become this kind of lightning rod issue for the country. But as someone who's not particularly religious and is a Reformed Jew on top of that, I found her talking about her faith and what her marriage was like to be very soothing and beautiful. And her saying that she forgives Tyler Robinson, Charlie Kirk's alleged killer, was quite something. And, talking about how Charlie wanted to save the lost boys of the West. He wanted to save young men, just like the one who took his life. On the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." That young man, I forgive him. And that long, pregnant pause with the tears streaming down her face and the crowd just erupting in applause that felt like they were trying to give her this massive hug at what must be the most painful point in her life was really moving. I thought in her New York Times interview, though, the quote that really made the most impact on me, and I think sums up the difference between at least what Erika Kirk is right now and what Trump and the MAGA movement is Robert Draper, the Times journalist, asked her, what comes next? And there'll be this trial. And she said, "I've had so many people ask, do you feel anger toward this man? Like, do you want to see the death penalty? I'll be honest. I told our lawyer, I want the government to decide this. I do not want that man's blood on my ledger. Because when I get to heaven and Jesus is like, eye for an eye, is that how we do it? And that keeps me from being in heaven, from being with Charlie." And again, the grace and the poise of that response and how faithful it is. And then you see Donald Trump that's like, "I hate everyone, eye for an eye." And I'm sure you want to reflect on Stephen Miller and all of the 1930s callbacks and dog whistles that were in his speech. And you think, do these movements actually work together? Like, what will become of Erika Kirk and that message as she becomes a figurehead for the MAGA movement in place of her now deceased husband?
Yeah, I thought you summarized that well. First off, I think it's important that people get together in a collective and mourn together. I think it's part of closure. I think it's really important. I lost a friend a couple of years ago, and one of the things that was just so disappointing to me is his family, let's be harsh, didn't get their shit together enough to have a service for him. And it was just a lack of closure. So I like it when people get together and mourn, and the outpouring, the size of the crowd, the fact they did it in Arizona, his hometown. I thought was really, inspiring and nice. She invoked Jesus in the way you want to invoke Jesus. And I've become somewhat cynical. So religion plays a huge part in our society. I've grown to believe that we need more religious institutions, and that's coming from an atheist. But she invoked, Jesus' name the way it's supposed to be invoked. Whereas I typically find most people who invoke Jesus' name, who are elected leaders, usually use it before they outline why we're going to cut food stamps to single mothers. So it felt nice that she was calling on her better angels and using scripture and religious references as a means of trying to cool temperature. You're exactly right. His speech was exactly what you would expect. He just talked about himself. The speech that just absolutely rattled me, and I'm not sure is getting enough coverage, is Stephen Miller basically plagiarized
Goebbels.
Joseph Goebbels.
Is it Goebbels or Goebbels? I always mess that up.
Joseph Goebbels, that's what I said.
Yeah.
I don't know. But basically, he plagiarized a 1932 speech given by the Nazi propagandist in memory of a 22-year-old paramilitary activist whose murder, turned him into a fascist martyr. And I'm not equating Kirk as a fascist martyr. I'm saying that Stephen Miller is basically cosplaying Joseph Goebbels. Yeah. And by the way, I'm getting this from an article I read by Travis Geddes. The day that Charlie died, the angels wept, but those fears had been turned into fire in our hearts, and that fire burns with a righteous fury that our enemies cannot comprehend or understand, Miller said. But I see Erika and her strength and courage. I am reminded of a famous expression: the storm whispers to the warrior that you cannot withstand my strength, and the warrior whispers back, I am the storm. We are the storm, and our enemies cannot comprehend our strength, our determination, our resolve, our passion. And it just literally mimicked. It's like, remember when Joseph Biden or President Biden was accused of plagiarizing a JFK speech when he ran in 92 or whatever it was? Okay, it's one thing to plagiarize Kennedy, but when you start plagiarizing Goebbels as if it's a value add at a funeral, the way he was speaking about it, and the thing I don't get, I just kept thinking, okay, who is they, boss? Like, who is it? Young white men? Is it Mormon families? Is it who? When you say they, the enemy, who are you talking about exactly? Because if it's
us, we're the enemy.
Progressives.
People who vote for Democrats. I don't even think that it has to be progressives. I think it's people who are not part of their movement, and they are setting up clear lines in the sand. They meant it when they said this is war. And now you're using the words and the terminology that, a great war chief used. So I think it's us, frankly.
So I would encourage anyone to go look at Joseph Goebbels' speech called The Storm is Coming, given July 9th, 1932. Goebbels, then the Nazi head of Berlin, used the speech to rally supporters by invoking the martyrdom of a guy named Horst Wessel, a young Nazi stormtrooper killed in 1930. Historians are suitably freaked out and saying, okay, he didn't even try to change the words in the sentence structure here. And it's very, I keep wondering when at some point are they going to call these people out? And I feel compelled to say that almost every study so far, from Cato Institute to the FBI itself, has said that the vast majority of this type of violence is committed from people that identify as radical right. The second is motivated by more Islamic fundamentalism, and the smallest number is from quote unquote people who could be categorized as radical left. And generally speaking, the majority of these people, it's a stretch to even think that they're politically motivated. And then the question becomes, okay, Stephen Miller, assume that you win. Assume you're able to misinterpret the fonts on shell casings as meaning this is clearly a radicalized movement that you have to activate and incite violence. Is that your goal? Is your goal is more violence here? What's the end game here? And again, I come back to the same thing. nobody wants to talk about the real culprits here. None of our leaders seem to be willing, and this is true on the left right now in terms of the right. It's about young men with no economic prospects. It's about going extremely online and getting radicalized and then having access to guns. And no one seems to be talking about those three things. Spencer Cox, to his credit, Governor Cox did talk about the cancer of social media. But there were, I walked away from this thing thinking it's nice that people get together to mourn and form a collective in person. That's inspiring. Erika Kirk, who I believe, quite frankly, is probably going to have a future either in politics or trying to pick up his movement. And then the really upsetting thing was, no shocker, President Trump making it all about him. But I thought absolutely the scariest part was the applause that Stephen Miller gave for cosplaying, the premier Nazi propagandist Joseph Goebbels from 1932. This shit is scary. And that cannot be. We as Democrats always want to call on our better angels and be kind. But let me be clear, Stephen Miller. If you feel that you're unfairly being called or referenced, or people are drawing comparisons between you and Nazis, then stop plagiarizing Nazis. Here's an idea. Don't have fascist tendencies, or don't outline the fascist handbook, and don't give the greatest hits of Joseph Goebbels at a funeral, for God's sakes. Any closing thoughts here, Jess?
I mean, it runs in his blood to want to be like this. There's video of him as a high schooler, essentially talking the same way. And I think back to during the campaign, remember, they're eating the cats and the dogs about the Haitian migrants who were here actually legally. And they started saying, they're poisoning the blood of America. And that's the same kind of rhetoric. And one of the things that kind of sent shockwaves through my body was, when he's staring direct into the camera and he goes, "You are nothing. You produce nothing." Like, people who are not part of the MAGA movement are worthless. And that translates pretty easily into someone thinking that they could be violently taken out, right? Because if you are nothing, if you don't contribute to society, what's the worth of keeping you around on this planet? Right. And that balance between Erika even saying, when we stop talking, that's when people get violent. Like, she understands what happened here and has managed to find solace in the fact that Charlie even knew that he could die for this cause and was comfortable with that. And then you look at the rest of them that are going to do whatever it takes to ensure that we are in this war and, frankly, get to a point, I think, where we don't have elections anymore. And I know that people are going to say, and I'm probably one of those people when we talk again tomorrow, is going to say, elections are won on bread and butter issues, right? We need to know what the inflation is, cost of groceries, they're taking away your health care. And that's all true. But there is something so clear being said right now about the intentions that the MAGA movement has for the direction of the country and what they think of the 81 million people who voted for Joe Biden in 2020, or the people who are not part of their movement, that we can't ignore. And those historians' voices need to be amplified, and we need to be as loud as possible about the real threats that they pose, because they're just, they're taking those studies off the DOJ website that says that right-wingers are the one who, predominantly create ideological. Is that amazing? I don't know where it went.
Those pages disappeared.
Yeah.
Poof. Yeah. We should briefly just touch on the backlash against Disney. The stock is mildly down. It's down about 3% on the past 5 days. Supposedly, I've seen a lot of screenshots of people canceling. I don't know how many that is, but it does appear that people are taking their anger out, I would argue justifiably, on Disney. Any thoughts, Jess?
The thing that stuck out to me, and we'll know in the coming days exactly what the impact is that this was not an organized movement. Whatever's going on right now, there haven't been, big accounts on social media or left-wing organizers saying, it's time to cut your Disney subscription. Like, that includes Hulu too. That people are making it clear that they don't support this kind of oversight and restrictions and, a company being beholden to the government. And I think that that's a very good thing versus feeling like this is something that the Democratic Party is doing. It feels like something that is grassroots in a genuine way.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of economic reprisal, and I'm doing more research on the notion of an economic strike to try and push back or establish the consumer base in America as some sort of co-equal branch of government. So I like it. I'm hoping it's effective. I tried last night to cancel Hulu. Of course, because my 15-year-old wasn't around, I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't log on to Hulu, and I couldn't cancel it. I can neither use it. I just know I'm paying for it. That's what they figured out.
It's the best way to do it.
But I can't figure out how to watch it or how to cancel it. But I will figure it out. I think you're going to see an activist show up at Disney. I think Bob Iger his days are numbered here. He handled this really poorly, settling with the Trump administration. A lot of people would argue that he started this mess by enabling the Trump administration and emboldening other CEOs to cut a deal with Trump, opting for shareholder value over anything resembling stakeholder value or fidelity to the Constitution or free speech or trying to push back on censorship. The biggest mistake Bob has made in his career was coming back. He has just been incredibly tone deaf. I think that you're going to see an activist show up, take a stake, and either argue for the split up of the company, for God's sakes, get rid of ABC. It's doing nothing but causing us trouble. And then two, remove Iger and potentially split up different components of the company that are more valuable in the marketplace. But you're going to see something, I think, happen at Disney in fairly short order. The censorship here is so bad that it's even sent a chill down the spines of people who generally just take their marching orders. And folks, including Senator Ted Cruz, are saying, look, the same thing could happen to us and will happen to us. And that kind of summarizes the problem. The most dangerous thing about an autocracy is it emboldens people to continue to do this kind of stuff. When you say, all right, engage in this type of autocracy, and if you're on the right side of it, I'll give you TikTok, or gets, access to, unfair advantage. And if you don't, I might come after you, show up and raid your house at 4 a.m, John Bolton, eliminate your security detail, putting you in physical harm, even though you ordered a strike on the head of Iranian security. And so the temptation to go to that side becomes irresistible for a lot of people. And this is a problem right now with the Democrats. And I'm not sure what the ultimate solution is it clearly Mark Andreessen and Larry Ellison. They say, well, okay, this is not fair. A company's being carved up and handed to us without the prospect of anyone else getting a right to bid on this company solely because we are Republicans. And the fact that certain networks are getting the threat of the FCC license being pulled is clearly wrong. They're willing to be wrong. What I don't understand is that they don't believe, or maybe they're so old I think they'll be dead by then, the House, Senate, and the White House always eventually flip back to the other party. Americans generally don't vote for the best person. They vote for different. At some point, Democrats will get control of the White House, Senate, and the House. And effectively what they're saying is, I believe the Democrats are such fucking wimps or have such a fidelity to the law that the repercussions won't be that great against me. And I would think at some point they would realize once the Democrats are back in control, are they really going to want to help out Larry Ellison and Mark Andreessen? You don't think they're going to be angry and looking for a little bit of payback here and potentially weaponizing, maybe not as brashly, but more elegantly, some sort of retribution here? It just strikes me that they think we can behave this way. And even when there's a different administration in power, they won't, those guys are wimps. Those guys won't hit me. They'll either show fidelity to the Constitution, or they're just, I'm not worried about them. I think this is a bad business move for those guys to engage in this autocracy. Your thoughts?
I hope that you're right. The indication so far is that isn't the case, or they think that there'll be a way to explain it away, or that Democrats also like to make money, which is true. And we are capitalists, which I like to remind people for all the times that they call us socialists or communists. So remains to be seen what they get out of it. But everybody, including the Republicans who go along with everything that Trump wants them to, are just YOLOing their way through this, I think. And then they'd rather beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. And I hope that it does in some way backfire against them. But Democrats have really got to show up, and they got to have a backbone about this. You got to be more Mitch McConnell than Chuck Schumer, and, make your voices heard, and then also make it clear that there will be real repercussions to people that are participating in, limiting people's constitutional rights, which is what all of this ends up amounting to.
All right. let's leave it there. Thanks for watching this YouTube exclusive video. Please subscribe. Hit subscribe now, please.
Just do it.
Just do it. Just do it now to keep getting up to the minute videos and conversations. We'll be back again soon. Have a good rest of the day, Jess.